This week we had to sit down, not with the coaches, as the players, and figure out, what we have to do as a team to regroup, to fix what we've done, and to fix, when things don't go our way, how we're going to fix it.
After falling in blowout fashion to SMU and UCF, the Owls look to salvage their standing in the East.
They're coming off the bye, ready for the Bulls. Inside the Nest is live, and it starts right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Inside the Nest. I'm Dan Wilson. She's Brooklyn Vaughn.
We've got a lot in store for you today. Of course, we'll talk all things USF, take a look at the rest of the AAC, and drop back into Edberg Olson Hall for Rod Carey's presser.
This is a big game for the Owls in many ways. It's another road trip for a team that has not been strong on the road. Not to mention, this Temple team is riding a two-game losing streak where they've been outscored by a combined 108-42 versus SMU and UCF.
Coach Rod Carey is scheduled to hang at the podium at Edberg Olson Hall in about 13 minutes, and that's where we're going to find Inside the Nest reporter Ray Dunn.
Ray, this is an unfamiliar territory for Rod Carey, who went 38-10 in conference play in his 6 years at Northern Illinois, and a loss on Thursday, and the Owls would fall below 500 in the conference.
Yes, guys, this is certainly going to be a tough one on Thursday for the Owls. They went 5-1 to start the season in Rod Carey's first year, but they've hit a bit of a speed bump. Now, of course, it's always difficult for a coach in his first year making the jump to a new program. You can ask the 5 Temple coaches who have done it since 2010, and they've done so with some mixed results.
The last decade for Temple has been the most successful in the program's history, with 78 wins since 2009, 6 bowl appearances, and only the second conference championship in the Owls' history. Champions. And this success has also brought about unprecedented change in head coaches, with 6 different coaches in that span. It started with Al Golden's jump to Miami in 2010. Next was Steve Addazio, who bolted for Boston College after 2 years.
My first year there, we went in there, we won the first bowl game in 30-something years, and Al Golden had done a tremendous job prior to that of resurrecting the program.
Addazio's seat is currently getting warm in Massachusetts, as the Eagles have been a very mediocre 43-42 since he took over in 2013. Following Addazio was Matt Rule, one of Al Golden's offensive coordinators. The final 2 of his 4 seasons were historic, winning 20 games and a conference title.
But I knew that our job was done there. Our time was over. Those kids went from 2-10 to 6-6 to the winningest 2-year stretch at Temple. And I say that because I know they're watching, and I want them to know how proud I am of them.
Currently, Rule is engineering an incredible turnaround of Baylor's program, with the Bears 8-0, ranked 12th in the country. Jeff Collins emerged as his successor and had the most successful first 2 seasons in program history. 15 wins and a bowl victory later, Collins went home to Atlanta to be Georgia Tech's lead man. His first season in Atlanta has been a struggle. The Yellow Jackets currently sit at 2-6, including a loss at Temple back in September.
Got to give a lot of credit to Temple. We knew coming into the game what a talented roster that was, having developed that team and recruited a lot of that team.
His replacement was supposed to be Manny Diaz, who lasted at Temple for 17 days before jetting back to Miami, where his Hurricanes are currently 5-4.
Manny Diaz.
Diaz's swift departure gave way to Rod Carey, who is 2 wins shy of tying the program record of 7 wins for a coach's first season.
Another head coach, former for the Owls, that is doing big things is Bruce Arian, currently the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who sit at 2-6 on the season. Interestingly enough, a former Temple assistant in Ryan Day currently leads the unbeaten Ohio State Buckeyes. But back to this program. Head coach Rod Carey will be at the podium in just a few minutes. We'll have that for you. But until then, reporting live from Edberg Olson Hall, I'm Ray Dunn. Brooklyn and Dan, back to you.
Thank you, Ray. Now let's go ahead and take a look again. Matt Rule leads the Bears to an 8-0 record so far this year, and now through 11 weeks, they find themselves ranked 11th in the AP poll. The Bears haven't been ranked since 2016 and haven't started a season 8-0 since 2013. We'll have more on Rule in a minute. And then there's this guy. Remember him? That's Miami's own Manny Diaz. He spent just 17 days during the offseason on North Broad. By making the move back to Miami, Diaz became the 5th consecutive Temple head coach to depart the program to go to a Power 5 job. His first year at Miami is off to a 5-4 overall start, matching the U's record through 9 games in 2018. Before Diaz's departure, of course, Jeff Collins. He answered the call to go home as well, back to his home state to take over the Georgia Tech program. He and the Yellow Jackets are having a tough going through their first season, finding themselves 2-6 overall and 1-4 in conference play. Collins and his staff have continued to emphasize that the scout and rebuild processes are in order as they look to change Georgia Tech's playing style from the triple option offense the program ran prior to Collins' arrival.
And it seems like all Matt Rule really needs is 3 years to completely turn a program around. Take a look at this comparison between his time at the head coach of the Owls and his time now in his 3rd year at Baylor. First year at Temple was one to forget at 2-10. But then he went 6-6, and by year 3, he had a 10-4 squad en route to a conference title game. Not to mention the fun hosting College game day when the Owls took on Notre Dame. 2017, his first year at Baylor, he coaches a 1-11 team. Immediately improves to 7-6 in year 2, and now he's in the midst of an undefeated season as the head coach of the Bears. 8-0 and ranked number 11 in the nation. Matt Rule certainly has proven his worth if he's just given a little bit of time, and he's a guy whose name has been circling around for some NFL jobs. So don't be surprised if you see this guy roaming around the sidelines on Sundays at some point in the near future.
At 5-3 and a month remaining, the Owls' bowl outlook is very much still in the air.
Yeah, they're still a win away from becoming officially bowl eligible, and even then there's 8 bowl games that have ties to the AAC. Lots of possible landing spots. And as you take a look here, they do have still a November schedule to play as they'll be taking on USF this Thursday. They are 5-3, so still looking for that one win, and got Tulane, Cincinnati, and then an easier game in UConn at the end of the year. You know, and you talk about landing in a potential 6-6 record situation, and I just think it's surprising that we're at this point, considering the fact that they started off in that red hot 5-1 start. So, you know, it really is up in the air for the rest of the time here on out. But let's go ahead and take a look at the possibilities. You mentioned there's a lot of landing spots for the Owls. There's a couple bowl games that the AAC does have ties to. You have the Birmingham Bowl, which would be against an SEC opponent down in Birmingham, Alabama, and the Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl down in Florida. They're familiar with that one. It wouldn't be the first time down there. Now you also have the Hawaii Bowl, which is way west of the West Coast, out in the islands of Hawaii, and then a little bit different climate, the Military Bowl, just down 95 in Annapolis, Maryland.
And I'm telling you, if I could go anywhere for these bowl games, it'd be anywhere but Annapolis. Yeah, how nice is Hawaii sound?
Hawaii sounds good. Right?
Hawaii does, and as well as those 3 other Florida options that they have. Again, the Sun Belt game that could be played down in Orlando, Florida, the Cure Bowl, and the Frisco Bowl, which would be an at-large bowl in Texas. Another place I've never been, but I'd love to go.
Yeah, and of course, some of these bowl games they have played in the past. We're going to take a trip down memory lane here to some previous bowl games, starting with 2015, the Owls in Boca Raton, Florida, taking on Toledo. Owls allowed 20 fourth-quarter points to lose this game 32-17. Quarterback Philip Walker threw for 236 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception in the game. The Owls' lone touchdown, it came on a run from tight end Kip Patton. Temple allowed 79 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground to now Cleveland Browns running back Kareem Hunt. It was the Owls' first bowl appearance in 4 years, and it started the current streak of 4 Temple teams in a row to play in a bowl game.
And then in 2016, with former special teams coordinator Ed Foley at the helm, because of Matt Rule's departure, the Owls took a road trip down to Annapolis, home of the Navy midshipmen, to take on Wake Forest in the Military Bowl. It was a slow start for the Owls, who were ranked 24th with a record of 10-3 and were highly favored entering this matchup. The Demon Deacons owned the first half as completing on 3rd down proved to be the Owls' Achilles heel. Current XFL quarterback P.J. Walker led the Owls to a second half rally, but it wasn't enough to come out on top. Final score 34-26.
And now it's time to recap one of my personal favorite bowl games, the Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl. Yes, you heard that correctly, at which point was played inside Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg, Florida. home of the Tampa Bay Rays. It was the first year of Jeff Collins' two-season tenure, and he capped it off with a win 28-3 over Florida International. Frank Newtile threw for 254 yards to go along with both a passing and rushing touchdowns. The Owls also got rushing touchdowns from running backs Raquel Armstead and David Hood, who had 51 and 76 yards respectively, capped off a 7-6 debut season for Jeff Collins.
And now fast forward to 2018, the Owls flew down to Shreveport, Louisiana, where they had some of the best gumbo of their life. That's the only thing they enjoyed down in Louisiana, as they struggled against a Duke team led by current Giants quarterback Daniel Jones. This performance quite possibly could have put Jones on the NFL scouts' radars. Ed Foley was again the man in charge for the Owls, as Jeff Collins decided to take his talents to the Tech in Atlanta. The Owls fell to the Blue Devils 56-27.
We have to go to break, but stay with us.
Yeah, when we get back, it's time to catch up with Coach Carey to see what he and the team have been up to over the bye and what they're looking ahead to with this week's matchup against USF. Don't go anywhere. Inside the Nest, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Here we look live at Edberg Olson Hall, where Rod Carey soon will be addressing the media. We haven't heard from him in 2 weeks due to being on the bye, so I'm sure he'll have a lot to say today.
Yeah, he's had 9 days to sit on that UCF loss. I imagine he'll be looking to completely turn the page there. As always, imagine to hear some injury updates. You know, guys like Afana Maje, Benny Walls, Matt Hennessy, Isaiah Graham-Mobley, and Ray Davis, all with injury concerns at the moment, and the injuries have really plagued the season thus far.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the defense first. You talk about guys like Maje and Benny Walls. Benny Walls, the X factor. You know, just like John DiCarlo, who we had on last week, he said that this defense is really struggling without guys like that. And then, so those are the very public issues that they're dealing with on the injury front. However, Ray Davis in a boot, missing practice. I'm sure he's going to get questions about him and how he's going to tie into the offense this week. Isaiah Graham-Mobley, another injury that they've sustained allegedly. So we'll hear some updates on, obviously, those 3 guys, and then the other 2 that we're also hearing about as well.
Yeah, and especially you hit on Benny Walls, the secondary issues over these past 2 weeks against SMU and then getting embarrassed on your home field at UCF is definitely something that they really kind of need to address here. Another thing I wanted to hit on is, I mean, this is still a big game, even though they were disappointing in those previous 2 games to SMU and UCF, is that they're seeking bowl eligibility, as we just hit upon in the last segment. Is getting to that 6th win is still a big deal, and you can't take it for granted. You can't be looking ahead at the schedule and say, oh, maybe we match up well against UConn. This needs to be a game that you win. Absolutely. You're going on the road where the Owls have struggled this season, so still a lot on the line. You've had a lot of time to get ready for this. Yeah,
they should not be comfortable going into this scenario thinking, again, like you just said, well, we have UConn to bank on to pull out a win there. You know, every game matters. They need to go 1-0 every single week. And again, the injuries continue to plague them. They continue to have issues on just all aspects. Now, the defense giving up over 600 yards in 2 consecutive games, and that was their strong suit. Again, in their 5-1 start, they were off to such a promising start, and now it's kind of very, very up in the air from here on out. So again, the bowl eligibility thing, I'm sure he's going to get questions. He's going to get nailed about that one today.
I want to hit more on the going on the road thing, because they have not fared well. Their only road win that they've had thus far was at ECU, and that was the last time they were on Thursday Night Football on ESPN as well. So this is a game, and a little bit more on par is USF. They're right there in the middle of those AAC East standings. They're not as good as the teams they just played the previous 3 weeks, at least on paper, but this is still a game they need to go down and win. Both teams are coming off of bye, so you can't really play into that as much, but this is definitely a scenario where the Owls have to go down, play a really strong game. Injury concerns still lurking. You're in the kind of final stretch of the season here, and it looks like we have Rod Carey at Edberg Olson. Let's listen in live.
Been a while. How's everybody? That sounded like not.
Is that what we look like?
Yeah, no doubt. Okay. All right. So, well, we're well on to South Florida. Obviously, this is our Thursday. Unfortunately, I have lived this life where days aren't days before in the MAC, and so we're kind of used to it. So today's Thursday, tomorrow's travel day, and then Thursday, obviously, Saturday, and we'll be ready to go. I like the week of practice that we've had. The bye week was needed, certainly, to get some guys back, and we've gotten a few of them back. Don't have everybody back that we'd want yet, but certainly are healthier than we have been the last few weeks, and that was good. Got some good rest in last week, got some practice in, developed the young guys a little bit, and then Saturday was Tuesday, so we got that going right into game plan week, and certainly are ahead, had a good chance to take that time. I think all games should be 12-game buys. That would be awesome. Like, you can actually go home and eat dinner with your family. It's amazing. But unfortunately, it's not the world we live in. So with that, we can open it up for questions.
Saw Raymond Davis walking through the sea.
I don't think he'll be ready to go. He's one of the ones that won't be ready to go. But he's a lot closer than I thought he was going to be. I can tell you that, the way he looked last week.
Just from what happened at UCF, I know there were a couple times where he left the field. Did he just get banged up in that game?
Yeah, lower body, lower leg, and just banged up. And, you know, he's been fighting a little bit of that since probably Georgia Tech. And so, you know, that game certainly took it out of him.
So would you expect Gardner to kind of take the majority of carries with Ruley kind of?
Yeah, so you'd see Gardner, Ruley, maybe a little Sadie in there too. Fortunately, have pretty good depth there, even though Ruley hasn't played a ton and Sadie hasn't played yet. But certainly feel good, you know, about Jags being in there.
What is Kyle Bowden's status? Is he?
He's just had completed his first week of full practice, so you know, he was out for an extended period of time, so he's just getting some confidence on it, and he'd certainly be there in an emergency role for this game.
What about Benny?
No, Benny won't be ready to go. He's one of the ones that won't be out there, so you know, we're disappointed about that, certainly. But Benny is working his rear end off to get back and has improved.
And the Amagier, but definitely goes now.
Yeah, they practiced the whole week, so which is good to see.
It's pivoting specifically to South Florida. They have kind of a pretty athletic quarterback back there. What do you
Few of
see
them.
from him? Yeah. They rotate a couple of guys.
Yeah, if you might, I don't know, one guy that may not be ready, another guy is, and certainly the third guy too. So, yeah, they run their quarterbacks and they run the ball, and certainly they throw the ball too. They have really good wide receivers and tight ends, and a good offensive line, and the running back's good too. They hand it off to him. So that sets up everything they're doing, and certainly have gotten better at it as years go on.
Does this feel like a little bit of a crossroads, coming off a couple tough losses?
What, Mark, what'd you say? Dramatic? Yeah. Did you say that to me? Yeah, yeah, did you say that? You know, no. Guys, and I know you guys probably want to go ahead and do that, and that's fine. You guys can. But for us, it's not. It's certainly the bye provided us a break, kind of a chance to self-evaluate, look at some things we were doing good, and obviously there were enough things after the last 2 weeks that we weren't doing good that we got back to basics. And really this time of year, it's got to be one at a time, because it's about so many boring little details about fundamentals, stance, start, you know, footwork, hand placement, pad level, all those things that, you know, you just, you know, the teams that really are focused on that, they usually have success at the end of the year.
Usually when you hear the term players aren't meeting, kind of like the alarm sounds a little bit. As a coach, does that make you happy that your players want to hold each other accountable?
Yeah, I don't know why that sets off alarms. It didn't for me in any way, shape, or form. I've preached player-led team. You know, it's something I believe in. I believe great teams are player-led. They have to take ownership. Now, you know, we have good leaders on this team, and if we didn't, I think then we'd probably have a different attitude toward that. But no, this team is a tight-knit group, and I think I wasn't there. Obviously, they had a couple meetings, but I think they were very productive from what I've heard about them.
South Florida's defense, second in the nation, takeaways, third tackle loss, they're very aggressive. What have you been most impressed in watching that?
Those two things, for sure. You know, their ball hawks are ripping at the ball every play. That's why they're creating all those turnovers. And then they play an attacking style defense. And so that's certainly something that we've seen and, you know, prepared for, and have to go meet that aggression. You can't play passive against that. So you have to meet that aggression with aggression.
What about their speed? third week in a row you're facing a team with real legitimate speed.
Yeah.
How tough is
Well,
that?
I don't think we've played a slow team yet, to be honest with you. And I'm not diminishing South Florida speed. They have good team speed, but it seems like something every week that we have to account for. And your angles to the football on defense have to be good. And certainly you have to try to use that aggression against them on defense at times. So that's something that we've been doing and we'll continue to try to do and execute.
Tough game against the run against UCF. Now moving on with Cronkite on USF. What's kind of going into trying to slow down that running attack?
Well, your eyes got to be in the right place because they got some good misdirection with it too, and they use 2 tight ends, 1 tight end, no tight ends, so they really challenge you personnel group-wise and formationally. So your eyes got to be right, communication has to be right, and then you got to run to the football. And it's going to take that full team effort, to continually stop the run.
Kind of bridging off of that, USF's top pass catching target is a tight end. Does that change anything for you guys on defense?
I mean, we always account for the tight end, right, in everything we're doing. You have to as a defense. So it just means that he's a good player. So you have to, if they're targeting him that much and he's having that many catches. So you just have to have your eyes right again and make sure that you're not losing that. And sometimes that can be a challenge because you could be blocking a D-end or going out or, fake blocking a guy and going out. So you just have to have your eyes right.
I think I mentioned that they, on defense, they kind of like to play man-to-man, and that kind of plays to your guys' advantage. How do you kind of, with being aggressive, how do you kind of balance that with also them forcing a lot of takeaways?
Say that again.
They're playing like a lot of man-to-man,
Yeah.
and you guys are obviously going to be aggressive, so how do you really balance that with, the amount of takeaways they've had this year?
Don't turn it over is how you balance that out. You got to have great ball security, and that's something that we've preached this whole week, and we'll continue to right up to game time.
Okay.
Oh, you guys are easy today. What's going on? All right, thanks, guys.
All right, and there you have it. Rod Carey addressing the media for the first time today in 2 weeks. A lot to talk about, but really focusing on that bye week and what that did for them. And I'm a little bit surprised, Dan, I'm not going to lie to you, that I thought that we would be coming out of this bye week and hearing about injury improvements, hearing that guys are ready to go for this USF matchup. But again, he's talking about how he spent the bye week self-evaluating, working on going back to the basics, and a whole lot of injuries still. No-goes this week. You have guys like Jagger Gardner is going to have to be the dependent on offense this week because Ray Davis is out for the week. So that's going to really hurt setting up the run game for them. But, injuries across the board, not ready to go.
No, absolutely. And that, as we mentioned, has plagued the Owls all season long. As you mentioned, Ray Davis will not be good to go. And a guy, you were talking about Jagger Gardner, Kyle Dobbins just finished his first complete week of practice. So it's going to be the Jagger Gardner show in the run game. And USF, the #1 pass defense in the AAC, so expect Jagger Gardner to get a hefty load. Another thing he really hit on was no passiveness, which I think that's a coaching a credit to the coaching staff as well, is that a lot of the play calling, we saw it back even in that Memphis game that they won, has been kind of passive of sorts. And you can't afford to win games down the stretch of the season against conference teams like a USF if you're going to be passive. So that's one thing that they definitely have to hit on. But the fundamentals thing is, I don't know if it raised your eyebrows, but definitely raised mine. In November, fundamentals are important, and he's absolutely right. Fundamentals, teams who have good fundamentals, footwork and things of that nature are going to be strong late in November. But if you're still working on those now, it means he did a lot of self-evaluation and pointed out a lot of things that have been going wrong on both sides of the ball.
Right, and so you had brought up a great point about Kyle Dobbins getting some action in practice this week. The young guys are going to be coming in on both defense and offense to fill the holes, and that means that they're going to be looking to the leaders of the team. Anthony Russo, he needs to step up this week. He needs to lead this offense to have a game where they can match USF's speed. Again, Rod Carey mentioning they haven't played a slow team yet, and they can't consider USF one either.
Yeah, they can't consider USF one either, is absolutely right. They've been having trouble keeping up with speed, and this is a guy. How about
But how important is Anthony Russo's involvement in the offense?
Oh, it's huge because you're down your leading running back. I know he likes to call it a running back by committee, but let's call it what it is. The numbers don't lie. Ray Davis is your leading running back. Anthony Russo has to play a good game and can't afford to turn the ball over. He went 3 weeks interception free, got back to it against UCF. If they turn the ball over and Anthony Russo doesn't play a good game, they're going to go down to USF and lose. Fully expect that.
Absolutely, and we'll maybe even see some more Todd Centeio action, of course.
Sure.
A lot on the line here for the Owls this week, and not super promising coming out of Rod Carey's presser today, hearing about the injuries.
Even after a bye week.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the injuries. They can't turn over the ball. He's touching on all these common themes. But again, there is a lot going on. Well, Rod Carey made it known what's going on this week and what he needs to work on. But we caught up with the players at practice on Tuesday, and here's what they had to say. This is a group that does a pretty good job not dwelling on the past, and now they can end the two-game. They're trying to end this two-game losing streak in a mid-week road trip with a game on national TV.
I think the one thing that we figured out is, when things start to go bad, guys tend to, try and make a play, whether it's me trying to, make a big play with the throw or running back trying to, break a big run instead of just hitting the hole it needs to. The thing we realized that we need to do is, whatever the score is, we need to, take it one play at a time and just do what the play calls us to do what our job is on that said play.
I took that pretty tough for me. It's my senior year. We had a lot of goals and expectations and things like that, but, we dealt with a little adversity, so we gotta just put our head down and keep working and continue to keep going. I want to win these last 4 games, so especially this one. Absolutely, I took that last game pretty hard. It took me about 2-3 days to get over it, for real. Spent a lot critical on myself, thinking out what I could have done differently, but after that, I kind of try to get the team back together, just refocus our energy to USF and then continue to move forward. Yeah, I mean, they're a good team. They got good athletes all around. Their quarterbacks are really well, they're really good. They have 3-4 different quarterbacks that rotate, all can move out the pocket, can run well. The running backs get downhill. They got good receivers that can catch deep balls. So, they're all around good teams, so it's definitely a good game.
It's a big one for us just because, the last 2 games when things didn't go well, we didn't respond well. And now we have an opportunity to respond after, 2 tough weeks and then a bye week. We've had a bad taste in our mouth the past couple of weeks. So it's a chance for us to respond and, come back better, come back stronger, come back faster, and do what we need to do and come back home with the W. Yeah, I think it was big for us. We had a lot of guys banged up, a lot of guys, playing through some injuries, playing through some bumps and bruises and stuff. So to be able to have a week, take a week off from practice and stuff, a couple of days off practice, get our bodies right, get guys, healed up, some nagging injuries, get those healed up. I think it's big time for us. And then, anytime you have 2 weeks to prepare for a team like we did for USF this week is big time. So, we've had the game plan set for about a week and a half and just been out here executing in practice. So we're looking forward to being able to go out Thursday night and execute it out there.
Anthony Russo really hitting on those injuries and the bye week, being able to get guys healthy, although he's going to be without Ray Davis. And as the Owls move into their November schedule, here's a breakdown of the differences in performances you've seen in September versus October. The Owls, of course, have played all their non-AAC games in the first month of the year. The Owls, they won 3 of those first 4, dropping their lone September road game in Buffalo. They scored more than 30 points per game in that span and allowed 17.3 per game with a .53 point differential, or plus 53, I should say. And compare that with this most recent month when they went just 2-2, scored about 25 points per game and allowed 38 per contest. Those SMU and UCF games certainly did not help that cause. Their point differential in October, -54. That's a swing north of 100 between September and October.
And we usually wait until the end of the show to talk more about the rest of the AAC. But this is front page stuff. Memphis senior wide receiver Antonio Gibson is this week's Walter Camp National Offensive Player of the Week recipient, and rightfully so. On Saturday against SMU, he rushed for 97 yards, including a 78-yard touchdown, had 130 receiving yards, including a touchdown, and a 97-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. He is the second Tiger ever to receive the honor. And some less exciting news on the injury front. Key players remain questionable to see action on Thursday for the Owls. Matt Hennessy, the leader of the offense, the O-line, is recovering from a concussion suffered in practice just before the UCF game. Efi Maije missed last game with an undisclosed injury. Unsure if he's good to go yet exactly for USF. And Benny Walls, the X factor. He's officially out for the week with an upper back injury. Bye week maybe not as beneficial as we had thought for the Owls. But attention is on Annapolis. After winning 5 consecutive games since a loss to Memphis back in September, the midshipmen get some respect as Navy finally cracks the AP poll rankings at number 25. This makes them the 4th AAC team to see the top 25 in Week 11. They face Notre Dame this Saturday up in South Bend.
And it's time to take our second break of the day, but after that,
we'll fill you in on everything you need to know about these USF Bulls. Inside the Nest will be back in a minute 30.
Well, Temple has that attitude of just being tough, and Temple tough, and they still carry that. And they can run the football. We got to be we got to be able to go tackle well, and where we can stop the run. And then they have 2 quarterbacks that they play, and the one is everybody thinks he's a runner, but he can't throw the football. And he just give him a different change of pace. When you're always looking for someone to change the pace, if they're not moving it, then they bring him in and let him try to get the ball moving down the field.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Owls heading down to Tampa this week to take on USF. USF is coached by Charlie Strong, the former leader at both Texas and Louisville. Strong rose in the coaching ranks due to the success he had with the Cardinals and current New Orleans Saints backup quarterback Teddy Bridgewater. Most notably, leading Louisville to a Sugar Bowl victory in 2013. His time at Texas did not go as planned, but he did make history as he was the first black coach in the football program's history. Strong is now in his 3rd year at the helm of South Florida, and it's a team that is currently 4-4 overall and 2-2 in the AAC. But the Bulls have won 3 of their last 4. Much like Temple, the Bulls are also coming off a bye heading into Thursday's matchup. They've played Temple 5 times since the 2 schools joined the same conference, and the Owls have the all-time series edge at 3-2.
Taking a closer look now at this year for the Bulls, some of their notable wins include UConn and BYU, and those come with some marquee losses. SMU handed them a tough loss, 48-21 early on in the season, and more recently, Navy rolled over USF in a 35-3 loss in Annapolis. So how does USF measure up to the rest of the conference? Well, their offense is that of average or just below, ranking 7th in points per game and 10th in pass yards per game. Their run game efficiency is a different story, though. They're 4th best in the conference, averaging 216 rushing yards per game. Their defense is a mixed bag. They're allowing their opponents about 31 points per game. Some bad news for Russo, or Centeo for that matter. USF leads the conference in pass yards allowed per game, holding teams to an average of 176 yards. It should be a little easier for the Owls to get the run game going, though, as USF is allowing their opponents to pick up an average of 216 yards on the ground. That's the big weakness so far this year. There's the big picture, and now let's take a closer look at the guys making this season a success so far for USF.
It's time for our players to watch, and I'll start off with South Florida's offense. My guy to keep an eye on this week, it's the Bulls' tight end, Mitchell Wilcox. He's USF's leading receiver this season with 254 yards and 4 touchdowns. But here's the impressive part. That's on just 15 receptions. That's 17 yards per catch for the 6'5", 245-pound tight end. USF's offense strength isn't in the passing game, which we mentioned, but the Owls' defense cannot afford to forget about Wilcox. He's my player to watch.
All right, and now let's switch to the defensive side of the ball, as the Owls' offensive line will have to watch out for Bulls defensive end Greg Reeves. Reeves is 2nd on the team in total tackles with 48, 6 of which have been for a loss, and tied for 1st with 3 sacks. He can get after the quarterback on the edge or from the inside, and he has caused havoc for opposing offensive lines all season long as he's forced a fumble and recovered 2. Reeves will certainly pose a challenge to the Owls' offensive line this week.
And for a deeper breakdown on the Bulls, we turn to Inside the Nest reporter Dom Gillespie.
Dom, he's been there since last Tuesday. Hey, Dom.
Thanks, guys. As far as October goes, it was a month the Owls would like to forget. But USF feels the exact opposite, with the Bulls trending in the right direction after a tough start. When comparing South Florida's September to October, the numbers are not even close. The Bulls were 1-3 in the month of September, being outscored 127-86 over that span. The losses come against Wisconsin, Georgia Tech, and SMU. but South Florida put that sluggish start behind them, and they caught fire in October, winning 3 out of their 4 games in the month and beating 2 conference opponents along the way. However, it is worth mentioning that the 3 teams they beat have a combined 9-16 record, so not the stiffest of competition there. South Florida's only loss came against a red-hot Navy team who, by the way, finds itself atop the AAC West. Like Temple, the Bulls are also coming into this game fresh off a bye week, so they will start the month of November looking to replicate the success they had in October. Now, usually my fellow reporter Ray Dunn is the math whiz, but I'm here to prove I can talk numbers too. In the month of October, all 3 phases of this Bull team improved drastically, but it's their defense I would like to direct your attention to, allowing only 25 points per game compared to Temple's 38. Their defensive unit also lowered their opponent's red zone scoring percentage from 78 to 53%. Don't let that slight increase in yards per play allowed in October fool you. In their loss to Navy, the Bulls gave up close to 8 yards per play. If you exclude that loss, the defense gave up a meager 4.8 yards per play in USF's wins. The Bulls' third down success percentage on offense is worth noting. It went up over 30% in October, and its third down defense has been a problem for Temple. Keep an eye on that aspect of the game this Thursday night. The month of October was the opposite of progress for Temple, producing their 2 worst losses of the season and virtually killing their shot at a conference championship. All 3 phases need to improve drastically in November. The Owls want to end this season in November the way they started in September. Reporting from Plasma, I'm Dom Gillespie. Brooklyn and Dan, back to you guys.
Well, thank you, Dom. And you heard Dom break USF down, so let's give you our stops for success for the Owls.
Yeah, let's take a closer look at what Temple needs to do if they want to come out on top this Thursday night as they head to Tampa. We're going to hop on the train here. Dan, imagine riding a SEPTA train all the way down to Tampa.
Yeah.
That would be something else. Temple, their defense is coming off of a bye week, looking to get their reputation back, and they've allowed more than 600 total yards for 2 straight weeks. As I mentioned earlier in the show, it cannot happen. The secondary, they cannot continue to give up these big plays, a lot of the time coming out of a lot of the pressure on the corners and safeties, so hopefully they're changing up their defensive schemes this week down there.
For me, I think the Owls need to force USF to put the ball in the air. Make them pass the ball. The passing offense, led by their main quarterback, Jordan McLeod, is second to last in the AAC with just 173 yards per game, and Navy's the only school who's worse, and they run a triple option. They love to run with the redshirt senior running back, Jordan Cronkite, who he's averaged over 127 yards per game in October to go along with 4 touchdowns. The strength in USF, certainly in the running game, make them put the ball in the air.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead to our next stop for success. Foreign territory is a bad excuse. The Owls absolutely need this visiting victory this week. Rod Carey, you heard him in previous weeks in his pressers. He's claiming that he's not concerned about being on the road with the Owls, but the numbers say otherwise, and the results so far say otherwise. USF, in my opinion, isn't an overly intimidating atmosphere. It could definitely be worse for the Owls, but it's a Thursday night primetime game on ESPN. You know, it's proven to be an issue for them in the past.
So here's my last stop for success. It was going to be get Ray Davis back involved in the offense, but announced today by Rod Carey, he will not be playing, so Jagger Gardner is now the guy. He needs to step up. Jagger Gardner and Ray Davis have played 2 of their worst games of the entire season against Memphis, against SMU, and then coming back to play UCF. They need to get those guys going again. USF certainly plays into that. They average, just around 5 yards a carry. So this is certainly someone who you need to get involved in the offense. It's going to be the Jagger Gardner show because Ray Davis will not be going, and Kyle Dobbins just completing his first full week of practice.
All right. Not only the run game, but across the board, the Owls have a lot of ground to make up for. It's time to take another timeout, but don't go anywhere.
When we get back, we're going no huddle.
All right, it's my favorite 6 minutes of the entire week. Been waiting for this one since last Tuesday. Welcome back to Inside the Nest and welcome back to No Huddle.
6 minutes, 6 topics. Here we go. Brooklyn, first question. Which individual Owl or position needs to step up in November?
I'm going to say Anthony Russo. I'm going to go with Anthony Russo, the lead guy on this offense right now. Again, he's been struggling the past couple of games, seeing dual action with Todd Centeio. But Rod Carey made a great point today. A lot of younger guys are seeing action on the offense this week, in the running back position especially. They need a guy like Anthony Russo to really step up and to overperform what he has been in past couple weeks. So not only with this week's matchup with USF, I'm going to say moving forward with the entire month of November, I'm really looking for Anthony Russo to step up and do a better performance of what he has been so far.
Yeah, it's a good choice, but I'm personally going with the secondary. The Owls defense, especially in the secondary, has been torched the past 2 weeks, and the run defense, even against UCF, was not much better. But the secondary, I get it, they're without Benny Walls, but the passing offenses that they have been facing, not just in AAC, but around the country that they're going up against and are going to have to go up against in these remaining 4 weeks, absolutely need to play better. You heard Rod Carey hit on the fundamentals of it, not turning your head around. You have to get your head facing towards the ball, getting your footwork correct. The secondary has to play better if the Owls are going to take this season to a bowl game and beyond.
All right, Dan, fun question for you now.
Yeah.
If Temple sold player jerseys, whose jersey would be the best selling in your opinion?
Well, I'm going to take your answer. It's the quarterback, Anthony Russo. He's got to be the most known guy on the team, certainly in football, that number 15 jersey. I think he's a pretty good option, you know, a nice, likable, marketable player, if you will. And I know he's not quite a single digit, but he is the redshirt junior quarterback. The team oftentimes goes and falls with their quarterback. I think the answer has to be, there are some, few rare instances where maybe a defensive player or receiver would outsell a quarterback. I don't think this is one of them. I think Anthony Russo would be the top dog there.
Fair enough. But I have to go with Sean Bradley.
Okay.
Talk about single digit player. He embodies that Temple tough mentality. And I really think he's kind of the face of this team now when people think about that Temple tough and those Temple Owls who they continue to love and support week in and week out. I think his jersey would do phenomenal in the market.
Now, Brooklyn, we talked just a few weeks ago about California passing a law to, allow players to benefit off of their likeness, not just in football, but in the entire NCAA. And then a report comes out this past week that the NCAA is going to allow this in all states. Do you think they're serious, or is this just a headline kind of just to simmer the noise a little bit?
Right. Now, key point that you just made is that wording of that rule, their likeness. So what exactly does that mean, and how exactly is that going to play out through in the real world once this rule comes to fruition? I'm not quite sure. I agree that it's still up in the air. It is something that, if it does happen, we'll see it when it gets here. But, the rumors are swirling. I can't get on Twitter without seeing bringing back college football, video games, and everything. So, and we just mentioned with the jersey sales, it's definitely a really interesting aspect to come into college football and college athletics as a whole. So we'll see.
It would be huge for jersey sales. Bring back the NCAA video games would also be big for those endorsement deals. I'm of the belief I'll believe it when I see it. I think eventually it's going to happen just because of the overwhelming majority. You're starting to see a bit of a paradigm shift in the way that people think, a little bit less traditional, but the NCAA has been very poignant in pointing out that they are very against what California did. Now they're just giving in automatically. Seems a little too good to be true, but I hope it is.
Right. All right, now moving on. If College Game Day, they visited Memphis this past week, if they ever make their way back to Temple, back to Philadelphia, Dan, who would you have as the celebrity guest picker?
I'm going to go with a Temple grad, Bob Saget. He was in Full House. He's a comedian.
I like it.
The guy's hilarious. Remember the last time they had the Philly Fanatic, which is a mascot, but I'd like to go back to, a real, not mythical creature this time. Bob Saget, an actual Temple grad. I think it would be great for publicity, great for the program, and hopefully we do see Game Day back on North Broad Street at some point.
All right, I had a tough one picking this answer for myself, but I'm going to go with Diplo, and that's because I looked into this one. He started his career in Florida, was thriving, but came to Temple, was a student at Temple. He's Temple made, Temple proud, so I'm going to go with him. I think he adds a fun, youthful aspect to Game Day, definitely a familiar face for college students, definitely a familiar face for the Temple community, so I'm going to go with Diplo for that one.
Now, the AAC already has 6 bowl-eligible teams. Temple trying to get into that class. Where do you rank the conference, the American, in relation to the other Power 5 conferences?
Right, and I really am seeing legitness being brought to this P6 conversation that we continue to hear week in and week out. You have all of these teams breaking their way into the top 5, the AP poll. I'm going to say that at least 5th, in my opinion, if you were to line them all up against the others. definitely better than the Pac-12. But again, I just am very impressed with the performances coming out of SMU, not expected to do as well as they are this year. And of course, Memphis, Navy getting the respect and attention they deserve.
Yeah, I know the AAC definitely tries to sell that they are a part of the Power Six. I think you hit it on the head. They're right on par there with the Pac-12, who I think is the weakest in those Power Fives. But as long as coaches are still leaving the American, there's still going to be a little bit of a drop-off. And you see here right now, they have 5 teams ranked in the top 30. That's 3 more than the Pac-12, 3 more than the ACC, right on par with the Big 12. So they're certainly contending, I think, as the years go by and more national TV games like you saw this past week continue to happen for the AAC. It will continue to gain legitimacy and continue to gain respect around the country. But I still think there's room to grow for the American as a whole.
Right, couldn't agree more. Well, everyone flocks to No Huddle for this exact question right here.
Yeah.
Dan, I want to know, what's your prediction? What's going to go down in Tampa? Temple taking on USF.
Well, Temple is favored by 2. They're going on the road on Thursday Night Football, coming off a bye. Injuries still plaguing them. They have not played well on the road. I think, unfortunately for the Owls, it's going to be, I think they'll keep it close, but I think USF is going to even the series score at 3-3.
Yeah, and I just can't really see how they're favored in this situation, especially hearing Rod Carey mention these injuries continue to plague them on the injury front. So with that being said, and adding in that they haven't succeeded on the road and they haven't yet played a full, complete team game and gotten a full team win, I'm going to say that this one is not going to end up in the Owls' favor. They will fall to USF this week. Again, I agree with you, Dan. It might be a pretty close game, though.
Yeah, USF trending upwards, the Owls trending downwards.
Absolutely.
It's time for us to huddle up, but when we come back, we take a look around the AAC.
Inside the Nest will be back in 90 seconds.
Really got fit to run well. I remember when we were down there, ran a lot of powers and counters. But I definitely want to get that win back. So this is a big game for me. I lost down there last time, and so I definitely want to go down there and get a win.
Kind of, it's embarrassment. You left there with a bad taste in your mouth. It was a night game as well. A Thursday night game. So just being on national TV, just leaving the way we left, it was disappointing. So we got a chip on our shoulder this week, and we're ready to go down there and get busy. They talented as always. They got athletes everywhere. Quarterbacks, they got a couple quarterbacks that can run the ball. Actually, one quarterback is a kick returner. So that just lets you know how versatile they are in the backfield. They got a lot of backs that play as well. They really want to run the ball as far as getting the ball to their halfbacks and quarterback runs included, and as well as deep shots, get you play the run and go over top.
Ton of speed. They got some real good corners, and our number 7's a real good corner. It's going to be a good test for our wide receivers. Up front, they got some good guys up front. Number 4 likes to play D and a little bit of linebacker. He's a stud. 55, their middle linebacker, can move around. He's a big guy in the middle, can stop the run. So it's going to be a real good test for us. We're going to get a lot of man coverage, which we love because anytime we can get our wide receivers one-on-one on the outside is big time for us. So
just keep swinging. When you go down, just keep swinging. When you get down and adversity comes, teams tend to just crumble. And I feel like if we just keep coming together after bad plays, we'll be fine as long as we're able to come together, fix the mistake, and go out there and do what we got to do.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. You heard Chappelle Russell, Sean Bradley talking about, trying to not repeat history, going back down to Tampa, left with a bad taste in their mouth when they went down there 2 years ago, and they're going in with a chip on their shoulder, and for good reason. Look, it's going to be a big game in the standings. The Owls are 3rd place in the AAC East at 5-3. USF just a game behind, but whichever team comes out of this one victorious will jump into that 3rd place spot.
Yeah, of course, and nothing new. Cincinnati is now in the driver's seat of 4-0 in the AAC. 3 teams are still in search of their first AAC win, too. Take a look at the bottom of the standings. ECU, UConn, and Tulsa.
Yeah, it was a big weekend for the AAC, and now to Saturday Night Football, which featured an AAC game this past weekend, site of College Game Day. SMU traveling to Memphis for National TV Showcase on ABC.
Yeah, it was 2 of the AAC's best in prime time, and the first time in AAC school played a host to College Game Day since last November when UCF hosted Cincinnati. And this was Game Day's first trip to Memphis, and one not to forget. Mr. Corso, all dressed in his Elvis best, went with the Mustangs to come out on top. Beale Street wasn't too happy about that one, but they had plenty to celebrate the rest of the night. Let's start with the second quarter. This touchdown from Xavier Jones gives the Mustangs their first lead of the day. Memphis answers in fashion. Brady White launches a 50-yard dime down the field to Antonio Gibson, who takes it to the end zone. The Tigers will enter the half on top, 23-17. Third quarter now, Brady White stays pinpoint accurate on this 24-yard pass, and it's DeMonte Cooksey who pulls it in over his shoulders to put the Tigers up 40-24. Brady White continues to put the ball all over the field, this time to Cooksey again, who breaks the tackle, stays on his feet for the 50-yard touchdown, his second of the day. Mustangs go for two, looking for any motivation to get back in this one, and they do it. Buechele finds the big boy Rashee Rice, making it 54-40. Tigers still have the lead. In the meantime, Memphis scores again with another successful two-point conversion attempt to close the gap, but they can't come out on top. Final score out of Memphis, 54-48.
And if you haven't already, it may be time to buy stock in the AAC. It has played host to game day this past weekend, and as of today, it has 4 teams inside the AP Top 25. Memphis took a leap up to 19, SMU down to 23, but still inside, and Cincinnati ranked the best of the 4 at 17, and Navy joining in on the fun this week, barely sneaking in at number 25. Now, of course, Cincinnati remains unbeaten in conference, but SMU had the best chance of representing the American in a New Year's 6 bowl game, and those chances may be out the window at this point. It was Memphis playing spoiler, ending the dream of perfection for the Mustangs, and the Tigers are now in a prime position to win the AAC West with a 4-1 conference record and holding the tiebreaker over both SMU and Navy. Memphis will host Cincinnati in the last week of the season in a game that will surely dictate where the AAC Conference Championship game will be played. And now that you have a healthy dose of standings and national rankings updates, let's dig into some players who have been standing out as of late.
Here are the AAC's most wanted players, led by the newly ranked Navy midshipmen and the 17th ranked Cincinnati Bearcats. First up on the most wanted list, Navy senior quarterback Malcolm Perry. He's wanted for possession of multiple weapons and was last seen fleeing the scene on foot. This guy knows how to use his legs. He is 7th in the FBS for rushing yards. That includes leading the AAC in rushing yards and touchdowns. And he has the most points scored in the entire conference.
I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball, and the guy the Owls are going to have to worry about in the second to last week of the regular season, it's Cincy defensive back Javon Hicks. He's wanted on several counts of robbery. That's right, he got intent to embarrass his opponents, and he's tied for 6th in interceptions, 4 interceptions on the season. That's 1st in the AAC, and he's also 1st in fumble recoveries. This guy is all over the place, a ball hawk, forces all kinds of turnovers and havoc for opposing offenses, and he's 9th in the AAC in passes defended.
Last but not least, going back to Navy, Jacob Springer, the junior linebacker, is wanted for breaking and entering the backfield. He has 7 total sacks this season. That makes him 16th in college football for most sacks, and he leads the American Athletic Conference in both sacks and tackles for loss. He also leads the AAC in fumbles forced.
And now we take a look at the AAC games on tap, and there's some more good ones. It's going to be the nightly Hurricane, UCF, taking on Tulsa, a 7-2 versus a 2-17. That game will be on Friday, 7 p.m. on ESPN2.
And the Pirates meet the Ponies at noon on Saturday matchup down in Dallas. Number 23 SMU looks to get revenge for their tough loss to Memphis this past week, while ECU comes off a close battle with the Bearcats, falling just 3 points short to Cincinnati on Saturday.
And Bruisin' Bearcat Bourbon, UConn, taking on number 17 Cincinnati, Saturday, 3:30 p.m. on the CBS Sports Network. A game you'd imagine Cincinnati would come out victorious, and that's going to do it for us here in Studio 3 for Brooklyn Vaughn and our entire crew. I'm Dan Wilson.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week.